What is going on, YouTube? Apex Legends has been out for over 2 years now, and as a day one player who has played pretty much non-stop since launch of the game, I figured it might be good to share some easy tips that could make a huge difference in your game. Most of these tips are fairly widely known by those of us that have been playing for a while, but maybe easily are overlooked if you are a new player or a beginner player. If you have any more questions regarding Apex, be sure to drop a comment down below, as I do try to answer as many questions as possible, and join the community Discord or hop into the Twitch streams, and I would be glad to answer any of your questions. The first tip might be one of the biggest in terms of getting the drop on enemies, and that is just how important grenades can be. I find that often grenades are forgotten and not taken as much as some people may like to stack up on some other items like ammo, healing, or shield items, but in fact, you should almost always be holding at least one grenade. My preferences for grenades are arc stars, frags, and then thermites. Arc stars are pretty versatile and can be used to stick enemies, stun choke points, stun and damage enemies that are in caustic gas or horizon ultimates, and are just overall extremely helpful in making pushes and making enemies play into your hand. The second grenade, frags, are decent and are a great way to deal damage, and are also just a superb way to get enemies out from behind cover. If an enemy does stay on the frag grenade and eats it, then not only will they take 100 damage, this explosion will also launch them a fair amount of distance and can push them out from behind their cover. Finally, a thermite is a great way of just preventing enemies from pushing you, getting great burn damage on enemies, stacking up behind walls, or just dealing damage to a downed opponent to eliminate them. Grenades have a lot of viability in the meta of Apex Legends, and the ability to just toss one grenade behind a rock can cause someone or an entire team to leave their cover and allow for easy shots by you while they are running from that grenade. Be creative and try to always have a grenade on hand for all of your engagements if you can. Our tip number 2 has to do with the settings, and there is one main setting to change if you are new to the game. That is that I recommend for you to adjust your field of view to make it at least something like 100 or higher. A higher field of view just straight up means you'll be able to see more around your legend, and means you will have more control of what you see, and allows you to better approach engagements because you can see more of what is in front of you. If you want a comparison between the difference between the default 70 and 100 field of view, it is on screen for you. One thing to note though, the larger your field of view is, the smaller enemies will get in the middle of your screen, meaning it can be harder to aim and hit enemies. So it is critical for you to find somewhere in the middle where you can still shoot enemies easily, but you can also see as much as you want. Our next tip has to do with getting shot in Apex Legends. This is a simple one, but one you may not realize. In Apex Legends, if you get shot, you actually get a slow effect for a quarter second or 0.25 seconds. This can only happen once every 3 seconds, and it is something to be mindful of when rotating or trying to push somewhere very quickly. But the big tip to know with this is that if you are a fortified legend, Gibraltar, or caustic, you are immune to this slowdown effect. This rolls me into the second half of this tip, and that is the fact that different sized legends will take different amounts of damage. A low profile legend like Wraith will take 5% more damage than a normal sized legend like Bloodhound or Fuse, while a larger legend like Gibraltar or Caustic is considered a fortified legend, and they will actually take 10% less damage due to their size of their hitbox. This is just another small tip, but is something that is easily overlooked when you do choose a legend to main. Our next tip is almost more of a reminder, but something I see done poorly time and time again when I am solo queuing in Apex. This is the fact that landing and looting quickly and efficiently is extremely important at the start of games. By doing this, you're giving yourself the best start to be successful. To do this, this means your fly and drop needs to be on point. You should be flying across the map or down to the ground at a minimum of 140 speed if you are traveling further, but if you are landing hotter, be sure to drop at the exact moment when you're about 45 degrees to the ground. This will keep your speed at a constant 145 to 150 and will make you drop as fast as possible while also dropping as early as possible. This will be the most efficient way to get you down to the ground and hopefully give you the extra valuable seconds to beat out your opponents to the loot and get you the edge you need. I can't stress this enough that the drop is honestly one of the most important parts of Apex Legends, and it needs to be done as efficiently and smartly as possible. Our next tip is something that is a bit more of a preference, but this has to do with inventory control. My primary focus for this is going to be the ability to really reduce the overall amount of ammo that you need to hold. The best way to do this is by choosing the correct weaponry. For me, I almost always love to roll a gun that just requires you to carry less ammo. Something that is generally a huge negative for me in running a weapon is something like running both a R301 and a Volt. these two guns require a crazy amount of ammo and will just eat up your inventory slots. So I'll drop the Volt in this instance and run something like a Massive or an EVA 8, which really only requires one shotgun ammo sack to be effective with this gun. This way you can hold more heals or grenades. A few great weapons that can reduce the overall amount of ammo that you need to carry are any shotgun, the wingman, or a triple take. I find almost all of these guns really only need 1 or 2 stacks of ammo to be effective with, whereas something like the Volt or an R301 really requires something like 3 or 4 stacks of ammo to be safe, or even more. Of course, there are times where maybe the engagement or the scenario requires something else like an R301 with a Volt, but I find lately, as in 95% of the time, I will almost always run a shotgun with another weapon. Keeping on with the theme of weaponry, my most asked question is what is the best or optimal loadout in the game? Apex Legends is in such a good spot at the moment, to the point where a lot of weapons are viable with a few exceptions. But for me, at the moment, the following guns for every range is what I have been using. For longer range engagements, I will run the triple take, G7, or single shot Hemlock, and 3x optics are my preferred choice of optic. For mid-range engagements, I will use the R301, Hemlock, Spitfire, and the Flatline. However, the Flatline for me is almost more of a hybrid weapon between the close range and medium range. And finally, for the close range weapons, for me, it's really the Massive, the Volt, the R99, or the Wingman. And I will also use the R301, or again, the Flatline as my close range hybrid type of weapons. If you are struggling with weapons in general, there is no more tried and true gun in the game than the R301 in my opinion. This gun is the most reliable, consistent, and typical assault rifle that you can use, and it is a great starting point to build your Apex Legends aim and confidence. As for any weapon I didn't mention, all of these guns are still viable for the most part, but just aren't quite as good as the ones that I listed in my opinion. Our next tip is another small one, but one that can drastically turn the tide in any engagement. This is the fact that if you are on an offensive legend such as Bloodhound, Gibraltar, Revenant, or Bangalore, and many more, I try to find ultimate accelerants and use them as much as possible. The ability to get 35% of your ultimate back from these shouldn't be underestimated, and if you can find 2 of these in the early game, it makes them absolutely insane, as you can pop your ultimate minutes before anyone else, and this can really help you out in early game engagements. I generally won't carry more than 1 ultimate accelerant, but if I do happen to walk by them, I will try to use them as needed. Moving on, let's now just briefly discuss one of the core pillars of what makes Apex Legends so great, and that is movement. While first starting up the game, it can seem as if the movement in the game is fairly linear, but there is an incredible amount of techniques that can be done to really excel yourself in the game of Apex Legends. I'm not going to go deep into specifics, but some of the big movement techniques you absolutely need to get down is running without your weapons out as much as possible to close gaps faster, sliding and slide jumping for momentum boosts, strafing to become harder to hit in fights, and finally crouch spamming to again make yourself harder to hit in engagements. If you need a way more in-depth guide on movement and overall techniques and how to accomplish them, we do have an ultimate movement guide on the channel, and that is in the description below and in the corner of your screen. The next tip is that finishers in Apex Legends will recharge your shields, and is a great way to get back shields if you are running low on them and are in a safe environment to perform said finisher. I find this is less useful in the end game situations, but in early game, this can be extremely clutch where you might have no shield since you just landed, and you may have a few seconds to perform a finisher before the enemy teams try to come and find you. If you do like this video, be sure to hit that like button. And our final tip, and honestly, I think the most important one in this video, is the concept and technique known as armor swapping. There's nothing in Apex Legends that is more important after cleaning up a fight, or even during a fight, than armor swapping. This is something that always needs to be done when you are in fights with multiple teams and are in need of a quick refresh of your shields. The simple concept of this is to swap your empty or partially empty shields with a fresh new shield from enemies' death boxes or shields that are already on the ground. There is no quicker way to get a free 50 to 125 shields, and can be an absolute game changer to help you turn the tides in fights. And when I say armor swap, I mean you can drop your red Evo for that white Evo shield if the engagement requires it, because 50 health is better than no extra health. On a basic level, this can give you as much as 50% or more bonus health than your enemies, and it is just a technique that absolutely needs to be learned to be flawlessly executed. So there we have it, 10 quick and simple tips to help you get you on your way to winning more gunfights and games in Apex Legends. These are some of the tips I wish I knew earlier on, so I could have been a better player quicker. If you have any more tips, feel free to share them down below and drop a comment down below and join the community Discord and Twitch streams, and we can chat all things Apex Legends. I appreciate the support. Until next time, peace out.